You're listening to El Cóndor Pasa, the most popular melody of the Yaraví, the musical genre that represents the Southern Andes and our city. The Yaraví is the musical representation of what the city of Arequipa essentially is, a fusion between Europe and the Andes. Just like the Jarawi, the pre-Hispanic Indian musical genre became the mestizo Yaraví that you are listening to. Just like the Indian food and the gloomy melody of the Indian men adapted the conqueror's guitar. Just like that, this valley Arequipa received the infusion of Spanish architecture that you see in the historical center of Arequipa. Welcome to our landmark terrace. We use this privileged location and impressive view to tell you about our city Arequipa, about its geography, its history, and its architecture, emphasizing the cathedral and the main square. From this viewpoint, it is clear how the geography enhances the beauty of the city. Located at the foothills of 3 volcanoes, which rise to almost 6 kilometers above sea level, in a valley created by a river, which enters through a canyon between the volcanoes, at the left and at the center, and then goes through and gives life to the city. The 3 volcanoes which form an arch on the northeast end of the city seem to host the present city of Arequipa, the misty volcano in the middle, Chechani to the left, and Pichu Pichu to the right. This superlative terrain has always impressed local people and visitors. In fact, Flora Tristan, an outstanding feminist French woman who lived in the 19th century, who was Paul Gauguin's grandmother, and a member of an important family in Arequipa, described vividly and poetically her impressions when she saw the valley and the volcanoes for the first time. In a 100-kilometer journey on foot coming from the coast, that is, from towards the back of this terrace, and after ascending a mountain from which she had the first view of the volcanoes and the valley, she said, "At the sight of such magnificent spectacle, the suffering from my troubles was gone. God manifested himself to me with all his power." Those 3 volcanoes, joined together at their foothills, presenting chaos in all its confusion, and raising their tops towards the clouds, a huge torch with 3 branches lead to venerate mysterious solemnities, symbol of a trinity that overcomes our intelligence. I was in ecstasy, and I did not try to guess the mysteries of the creation. No spectacle ever got me so excited before as this sublime manifestation of God. Climatic variations tend to enhance the extreme yet spectacular beauty of this valley and its volcanoes. Occasionally, heavy storms cover the entire volcanoes with snow, highlighting their elegance and majesty, generating even on the locals the same excitement felt by Gauguin's grandmother when she saw them for the first time. Occasional clouds decorate them temporarily, simulating luxurious huts, theater smoke vents, observing flying saucers, and an endless number of shapes for the free interpretation of the people of Arequipa. Sunrises and sunsets lighten the volcanoes with different shades of yellow and red, which together with the shadows produce sights that are reminiscent of other planets. The summer rains enlarge the green valley sometimes, even covering the foothills of the volcanoes, and after which there are spectacular rainbows that appear to generate at the volcano's foothills. For sure, the beauty of these volcanoes stands out most when they are covered by snow. In fact, some decades ago, the 3 volcanoes were normally covered by snow, but this is less frequently the case due to global warming. These majestic volcanoes have a long and violent origin. Through erosion, eruptions and friction caused by the collision of the continental plate with the Nazca oceanic plate has South America literally slid over the soil of the Pacific Ocean. Now these volcanoes are the main characters in the city, and in fact, one of the versions about the origin of the name of Arequipa is linked to the main character, the central volcano, Misty. According to this version, Arequipa comes from the Aymara words Ari, which means peak, and Quipaya, which means behind. Thus, it is believed that the Aymara people who came from the regions located behind the volcano thought of the current valley of Arequipa as the region behind the peak. The Big Apu. The Misty volcano is 17 kilometers away from this terrace, and its height is 5,822 meters above sea level. It is approximately 3,500 meters above the level of the main square. Misty is a stratovolcano, that is to say, a conical volcano built up by several layers of hardened lava. Misty was formed by two huge eruptions, which have left two craters one inside the other. The structure of its rocks shows that this formation took around 5 million years. This volcano is the only one that is currently active. Its last eruption took place between 1438 and 1471, in which the eruptive column reached 9 kilometers of height. That actually was the first eruption documented by the European conquerors in South America. Several relatively weak eruptions have happened since then. Studies have shown that eruptions that cause ash rains occur within 500 and 1500 years. The magnitude of the eruption in the 15th century indicates that a new similar eruption would be catastrophic for the million inhabitants of Arequipa. That is why the United States Geological Survey considers this volcano as one of the most dangerous in the world and the most dangerous in Peru. Its activity is monitored constantly. But Misty is much more than its geological characteristics. It is the Big Apu or divinity of Arequipa, the tutelary volcano, the main icon in the valley and in the city. Its name comes from the word mestizo, which is the racial mix between Spanish and Indian people, but which indigenous people use for the volcano with the connotation of master or lord, because mestizos were their unneeded masters in colonial times. In spite of its evident importance, this volcano initially remained anonymous for the European conquerors who arrived to this area, and for their descendants, who used to refer to the volcano just as the volcano or occasionally as San Francisco. The name Misty was given only at the end of the 18th century. Some versions say that the pre-Hispanic people gave other names to the volcano in their own languages, including the names Puquina, from the Quechua Putina. Putina means a boiling place, or Huahuaputina. Huahua means baby. The Incas gave an important role to this volcano, and they undertook human sacrifices in its crater. In fact, in 1998, archaeologists exhumed the remains of an Incan waka, a religious mausoleum with 6 mummies and more than 70 ceremonial and burial objects, such as ceramics and golden and silver statuettes. These objects are displayed at the nearby museum Museo de Santuarios Andinos. The importance of the Misty volcano for the Incas is also evident from some historical versions that indicate that its last strong eruption coincided with the birth of Pachacuti, the main emperor of the Incan Empire, so that the eruption could be considered as a prediction of the significance of this Inca. At the foothill on the left side, there is a small mound which is called the Sun of Misty. One legend tells that this sun started forming during the 17th century and grew quickly. The people were worried about its rapid growth, and a priest, Father Sangües, climbed the mount and anchored it with edge beams. After that, the mount remained short and weak, stiff like the son of an Indian woman, as a prose from the 20th century describes this incident. in a display of the great Catholic spirit of the city. In 1900, a 10-meter tall cross made of rails was placed at the top of the volcano to celebrate the start of the new century. In the past and now, people from Arequipa and its visitors frequently climb the misty volcano to overcome its huge physical challenge, to worship the tutelary volcano, and to appreciate the impressive sight from its peak. There are several urban legends about the ascension, including the mystery of two women who disappeared in the 1970s while ascending, both named Teresa. This brought about a series of speculations. One of them, Teresa Yequeto, was last seen in the zone of trees. These trees are visible next to the foothill on the left. 150 people searched for her for 2 months, but she was not found. The safest way to climb Misty takes 2 days after reaching the rear zone of the volcano by car, at a height of 3,200 meters above sea level. You can climb any time of the year, except during the rainy season, from December to March. The colossal and massive Guardian. To the left of Misty is the impressive Chachani. Its name means brave in Aymara. In fact, the magnitude and broad base of this volcano evoke fortitude and courage. Chachani is also a stratovolcano, formed by a chain of 4 peaks. Geological studies conclude that it started its formation long before Misty. It is 55 kilometers away from the main square. Its maximum height is 6,075 meters above sea level. It is higher than Misty, although it does not appear higher from this terrace because of its distance. The 4 peaks are named from right to left: Monte Trigo, with Mount, Principal, the main peak, El Ángel, the Angel, and La Horqueta, the Fork. Chachani has several volcanic vents, but it is a dormant volcano and the year of its last eruption remains unknown. Climbing to the top takes 2 or 3 days. Due to the limited quantity of snow, the ascension is relatively simple, and it is one of the highest peaks in the world that is accessible to inexperienced mountain climbers. Biking downhill from Chachani is increasingly popular. The Sleeping Indian Man. To the right of Misty is the Pichu Pichu volcano. This Quechua name means Peak Peak because of the several peaks that constitute the volcano. It is 66 kilometers away from the main square, and its maximum height is 5,650 meters above sea level, only 200 meters below Misty, although it seems much shorter because of the longer distance. This volcano is a chain of 7 peaks that originated from the erosion of several craters. In its central peak, which is called Crespón Grande or Big Ribbon, archaeologists found Incan burials in 1964 and in 1997 with ritual material, including mummies dressed with mortuary clothing and ceremonial objects offered to the Apu or god Pichu Pichu. If you see the peaks on the left, you may recognize the silhouette of a man lying with his hands crossed on his chest, which is called El Indio Dormido, the sleeping Indian man. The legend tells us that once upon a time, an Indian man fell in love with a princess and climbed with Pichu Pichu to ask for permission for the gods to marry her. The gods did not approve the union, and they put the Indian man to sleep forever on the summit. Some say that because of the refusal, the man himself chose to sleep on the summit forever. He thought that it was the only way to love the princess forever. So, the Indian man did the same as the volcano. He kept all his fire inside and fell asleep. Another version of this legend tells us that the sleeping Indian man is the Pichu Pichu itself, who was in love with the lady in white Chachani, and the gods got angry because they got distracted from their duties. The gods decided that Pichu Pichu and Chachani had to be punished. The sleeping Indian man would always look backwards and the lady in white would remain frozen and white forever. In the middle, a new volcano appeared, Misty, the Lord, who separates and watches them. Climbing to the summit of Picchu Picchu takes 2 days. High mountain guides are not needed because the ascension does not present any technical difficulty, but the company of a regular guide is advisable to avoid mishaps and delays. Among a sea of volcanoes. The city of Arequipa is closely related to its volcanoes, not only to the 3 majestic volcanoes which are home to the city, but others that are nearby. The largest natural disaster that the region of Arequipa has experienced was the brutal eruption of the Huayna Putina volcano, 100 kilometers away from the city in the year 1600, which covered the region and its crabs with a 25 centimeters, 10 inches layer of ash. The eruption actually covered with ash a great area of Peru, Bolivia and Chile. It damaged agriculture for 150 years, produced an increase in acid in the atmosphere, larger than the one produced by the eruption of Krakatoa volcano, and affected the weather of distant places in the planet, producing the coldest winter in Russia in 6 centuries. The amount of volcanoes in the area implies that eruptions in the region are frequent. In the last 20 years, the Ubinas volcano, 70 kilometers away from the city, and the Sabancaya volcano, 100 kilometers away, have erupted. Sabancaya is located en route to the Colca Canyon and forms another trinity of volcanoes with the Hualcahualca and Ampato. In the Ampato, a well-preserved mummy was found recently, which was studied by National Geographic and is exhibited at the Santuarios Andinos Museum. There is another trinity of volcanoes in the Colca Canyon itself, includes Mismi, which is the origin of the Amazon River. One of the most extreme terrains of Arequipa is the Valley of the Volcanoes, located between the deepest canyons in the world, Cotahuasi and Colca, and which has around 80 volcanic craters. The highest is 350 meters above the valley level and the smallest of meters. This valley of craters is a landscape that resembles the age when the planet was still under formation. Everlasting Spring. It is hard to imagine that among such a violent volcanic and seismic environment, this valley offers one of the most moderate weathers in the world. Cloudy days are rare. When referring to these days, many Arequipans turn moody, and we say he is experiencing La Nevada or snowfall disease. As pointed out by Arequipan Nobel Prize winner Mario Vargas Llosa, such day, the most peaceful person stops responding to the greetings of his neighbors, and for even a simple difference of opinion can end up grabbing his best friend around the neck. The temperature in the city center during summer does not exceed 25 Celsius degrees, and during winter does not descend below 6 degrees. The dryness of the air isolates the interior of houses from the external temperature, so locals do not have to use any kind of air conditioner or heating system. Inside the houses, you just need to wear short-sleeved clothes in summer and a sweater in winter. Even Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, the author of Don Quixote, knew about the kindness of the weather in Arequipa, and in his poem La Galatea he wrote, "In Arequipa, everlasting spring." In fact, the best known yet disputed hypothesis about the name of the city is related to the kindness of the weather. This hypothesis suggests that when Inca Mayta Capac arrived to this valley, his generals asked him if they could settle permanently in this valley, mainly because of the weather, and Mayta Capac replied, "Ariquepai," which in Quechua means, "Yes, stay." Unfortunately, human activities in the planet are affecting Arequipa's pleasantness. As the reduction in the thickness of the ozone layer has increased dramatically the level of ultraviolet rays that reach the surface, and as a result, there are more cases of skin cancer. The arrival of humans and civilizations. This moderate and mild climate established gradually around the year 5000 BC as the last ice age completely receded. And since then, human groups appeared in the valley. At first, they were nomadic conglomerates who hunted, fished, and collected fruits, and then they domesticated some animals, mainly camelids, and developed incipient agricultural practices. Gradually, hills were flattened and irrigation canals multiplied across the valley. Among the ethnicities that settled in the valley of Arequipa were the Yarabayas, who settled in the currently traditional neighborhood of San Lázaro, several blocks behind the cathedral. They actually almost became extinct, as almost all of them died during the last strong eruption of the misty volcano. But some of them survived, as they were in Cusco working for the Incan Empire. There were other ethnic groups settled in a region called Las Chimbas, on the other side of the river, such as the Yanaguaras, and others located in the east near Pichu Pichu, current districts of Paucarpata, Socabaya, Characato, and Chihuata. These latter ethnic groups spoke Puquina, the language used by the Incan aristocracy, in a cryptic way. The Incas arrived to this valley behind the volcano at the end of the 12th century, from the regions behind the Chachani volcano. As we mentioned before, it is possible that Mayta Capac stopped with his army in this valley, although this version has been questioned recently. According to this version, the Inca distributed land among 3,000 families who founded and imposed their political and social order in several towns throughout the valley, including the towns in the areas of the current districts of Yanaguara, Caima, Tiabaya, Paucarpata, Socabaya, Characato, and Chihuata. Several Spanish people arrived some years before the foundation, in expeditions ordered by Francisco Pizarro so as to learn more about the territories of the Incan Empire. It is uncertain thought who were the first visitors of this valley. In 1537, Diego de Almagro, one of the best-known conquerors of South America, was the first dignitary who visited the city. He stayed in Arequipa for 30 days. De Almagro came from Chile, from the direction of the Pichu Pichu, in order to supply his troops, and then head to Cusco in the direction towards Chachani to fight against Francisco Pizarro and his brothers in that city. This would be the first of many rebellions organized in Arequipa. In 1540, Pizarro himself and his troops arrived at Arequipa so as to establish military bases to prevent future rebellions in the region and logistic bases to link neighboring mining centers to the seaport, and thus way link them to Lima and to the world economy. Initially, the Spanish tried to set up the capital of this region in the coast towards the back of this terrace, but eventually preferred to found the capital at the Valley of the Everlasting Spring. According to the founding charter, the foundation of Arequipa was held in San Lázaro, the ancient home of the Yarabayas, as this was considered the most convenient and healthiest place. The traditional foundation pillory was placed in the main square and the traditional foundation cross in the area that is now the cathedral. Historical Center. This way, the main square, La Plaza de Armas, and the historical center were established. In 2000, UNESCO declared the Historical Center of Arequipa a World Heritage Site. According to UNESCO, the ornamental architecture in the Historical Center represents a masterpiece of the creative integration of the European and native characteristics, which is crucial for the cultural expression of the entire region. UNESCO considers that the Historical Center of Arequipa is a clear example of a colonial settlement challenged by the conditions of nature. The indigenous influences the conquest process, and evangelism, as well as for a spectacular natural scenery. The square design you can see is similar to the design of other cities founded by the Spanish and was carried out with a plan sent by Francisco Pizarro himself. The plots were divided into 4 and 8 plots, which were given to the founders according to the relevance of their participation in the conquest of Peru. At first, there were not many inhabitants in the then new Spanish establishment. A few public buildings were constructed, and most of the plots remained vacant. Each plot had a large indoor patio with vegetables and animals. Initially, the walls were built with adobe. Wood and hay was used for the roofs, and a system of irrigation canals was created as well. Within a few years, adobe was replaced by what the Spanish called sillar, the volcanic white stone. The historical center now has 500 so-called casonas or mansions, many of them built only in the 19th century over the debris of former colonial buildings destroyed by an earthquake in 1868. Because of this constant reconstruction after big earthquakes, people from Arequipa often say that the city is beautiful not only for its gorgeous appearance, but also because of its obstinate determination to remain standing in spite of earthquakes. We will describe further the influence that earthquakes have in the development of the local architecture when we talk about the main square and the cathedral. It is worth noting, though, that as a result of this process, constructions in Arequipa are currently extremely resistant to earthquakes. The urban services modernized fast in the 20th century, and during that period, the city population increased dramatically due to large rural-urban migration process in Peru. The aspect of the city changed radically as a result of this migration. Until then, the historical center was surrounded by several districts, and these were small and separated from the center by large crops. During the 20th century, wealthy people populated the districts of Yanaguara and Caima towards the left of the terrace, while people of more limited resources settled in Miraflores and Alto Selva Alegre towards Misti and Paucarpata towards the right of the terrace. Immigrants populated the furthest surroundings of the city. Arequipa has become the most important economic pole for the large indigenous population of Peru's southern highlands, which some Peruvians used to name derogatorily the Indian stain. By mid-20th century, this misnamed Indian stain constituted 2/3 of the Peruvian population and used to live as isolated from modernity as it was before the Spanish arrived, and in possible worse conditions than then as they were deprived from their most productive lands by the Spanish. Therefore, this immigration to Arequipa and Lima has constituted a very effective way to reduce poverty. Plaza de Armas, Main Square. The portals around the main square were not built right after the foundation, but centuries after. Initially, the area to the right of the plaza, currently named Portal de Flores, was assigned to Hernando Pizarro, one of Francisco Pizarro's brothers, and the area to the left of the plaza, currently named Portal de San Agustin, was given to Alonso de Cáceres, one of the main Spanish conquerors of America. The Cabildo, or City Hall, was located here in front of the cathedral, currently named Portal de la Municipalidad. The square became the main market of the city. At the time of its foundation, the square was actually larger, without the portals of the cathedral atrium you can see nowadays. Initially, it was an enormous square covered with bushes and plants. It stayed like that during the 16th and 17th centuries. The portals that surround the square were built at the end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century. They were then called Portal del Regocijo to the right, Portal de San Agustín to the left, and Portal de Escribanos where you stand. The portals initially had only one floor, made of rough stone and with little architecture. A statue was placed in the center of the square, which is not clear if it represents an angel or a soldier from the 16th century playing a trumpet. This statue was named Tuturutu because of the sound of the trumpet. Earthquakes have affected the square's architecture substantially. In 1784, an earthquake completely destroyed the beautiful Portal del Regocijo. Portal de Escribanos lost an important part of its structure and eventually had to be demolished. And the central fountain was severely damaged, so the Tuturutu had to be taken to the former prison, then located at San Francisco Square. The typically stubborn Arequipans immediately started the reconstruction of the portals. This time the three of them would have 2 floors. They remained standing until a 9 degrees earthquake in the north of Chile destroyed them again. In 1874, the reconstruction started again, and this time the construction techniques have proved fully resilient to earthquakes. The silent walls of these portals are witness to another striking contrast of Arequipa. Just like the Nice weather contrasts with the dramatic and violent terrain, the Roman Catholic conservatism, evident in multiple religious celebrations in the square, contrasts with the rebel spirit and an endless number of rebellions also carried out in this square. In this square, Arequipans would build improvised galleries to witness either a celebration of religious faith or an execution. Arequipans were part of the processions and celebrations for the patron saint of the city, as well as of the organization of rebellions against the government. When the cathedral's main bell chimed, people immediately asked, "Who are we fighting for?" In fact, we say that Tuturutu symbolizes the call to participate in the many revolutions that started in this square. Its silent walls have witnessed the execution of several historical characters. In 1836, Felipe Santiago Salaverry, a general born in Lima, was executed by firearm because of his opposition to a potential unification of Peru and Bolivia. This unification never happened. In 1854, the General Trinidad Morán, a Venezuelan hero who fought for the independence of Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, was executed in this square during the Peruvian civil wars in the first years of the Republic. That time, the military band played a march that is well known in Peru and is called the Funeral March of Morán. Military rebellions and major protests against arbitrariness of the government continued during the 20th century, and many of those produced changes in the central government. The Cathedral. The beginning of the cathedral was quite modest. Initially, it was just a small parish church named San Pedro. In 1544, the construction of a larger church started using sillar for the walls and gable wood for the roof. Further expansion took place in 1569. The cathedral was also significantly affected by earthquakes in the region. In 1582, it was destroyed by an 8 degrees earthquake. The main church fell down and was reduced to rubble. A few Spanish were shocked and suggested moving the city, but most decided to repair and reconstruct. 10 years later, the main church was reconstructed by Indian workers. This church is then considerably expanded and transformed into a church with 3 naves. The new church is built with arches and brick vault to strengthen the structure. The city was still during the reconstruction when in 1600 the Huayna Putina erupted violently. And if this was not enough, in 1604 the earth trembled again with great intensity and ruined several parts of the city. The cathedral was destroyed, but the religious rituals continued in a shelter made of sticks. In 1614, another reconstruction started which took over 40 years. Big earthquakes were frequent in 1667, in 1668, and in 1784, all of them causing considerable damage to the main church, but this time the cathedral did not collapse. In 1844, there was a fire in the cathedral which damaged the structure and burned almost all its relics. The next reconstruction and extension lasted 4 years. An earthquake in 1868 destroyed several parts of the cathedral, the towers, some parts of the main portal, some of the arches, and some altars were damaged. The two towers and the arches were reconstructed and modified quickly. This has been the last change in the architecture of the cathedral. This architecture remained standing after an earthquake of 8.4 degrees in 2001, the strangest in the world since the 8.7 earthquake in Alaska in 1965 and the 9.1 earthquake in the Indian Ocean in 2004. In this earthquake, the left tower was completely destroyed while the right one suffered serious damage. The restoration of both towers was finished in 1 year. Nowadays, the cathedral is 107 meters long and the facade is ornamented with 70 columns from the classical composite order. It has 3 big arches on the facade, and as you can see, it completely occupies the northern side of the main plaza. The Cathedral of Arequipa that you see in front of you constitutes a magnificent stone temple and a symbol of the traditional tenacity and courage of Arequipans.